Moed Katan Daf Gimel is entirely about the halachos of Shemitah, specifically whether or not you're allowed to do certain labors in the ground on Shemitah or immediately preceding Shemitah. The Gemara is in the middle of a discussion about watering plants during Shemitah. The Gemara will show whether or not that is included in a tolda, whether or not toldos are forbidden. Then the Gemara will discuss plowing. The Gemara will go through the same series of proof from a brisa in both topics. The Gemara will have an additional step as far as plowing goes. Then the Gemara will move on to the subject of work preceding Shemitah and whether there is a time before Shemitah when the Isser to do malacha on the ground begins or not. And the Gemara will have a back and forth as to whether it exists, if it exists, how far back does it go, and what is the earliest source of that halacha. So let's begin. The Gemara has last said that our Mishnah said that it's permitted to water the ground during Shemitah. The Gemara wants to know why is that permitted. The Gemara had said because there are avos and toldos malacha, main categories of work and subcategories of work. Specifically, we find that in Hilchos Shabbos. And the Gemara says that on Shemitah, subcategories are not forbidden except for the two listed explicitly in the Torah. That's pruning dead branches from a grapevine and harvesting grapes. Other than that, the only things that are forbidden are the main categories of work to prepare the ground and to increase the fruits. So the Gemara now challenges this. The Gemara says, is it true that there are no subcategories of work? Is it true that toldos are not forbidden during Shemitah? The Gemara says it can be. And the Gemara says, because I'll show you explicitly in the brisa that subcategories of work are forbidden during Shemitah. So the brisa is a lengthy brisa, which will be quoted twice in full on the daf here. So the Gemara now quotes it to prove that subcategories are forbidden. The brisa says as follows: the syntax of the pasuk describing the Isser of Shemitah seems to be strange. Instead of saying lo sizra sadcha, don't plant your field, it says sadcha lo sizra, your field you should not plant. Instead of saying don't prune your grapevine, it doesn't say lo sizmar karmacha, it says karmacha lo sizmar. So what's the reason for that syntax? So the Gemara says that is to teach me that a number of halachas are forbidden because you have the phrase lo sizra, you have the phrase lo sizmar. There should not be any type of thing like planting, should not be any type of thing like pruning. All these things are included in the Isser. That's why the strange syntax is there. So what activities are included? So the Brisa lists them. So you have, first of all, you have zimur, which is cutting dead branches off a grapevine. You have idur, which is loosening the soil around the grapevine with a hoe. Then you have kisuach, which is cutting weeds. It's not the same as menachesh, which is uprooting weeds. Then you have mekarsimin, which is the same as pruning the dead branches, except that it doesn't apply to grapevines. That term applies only to other trees. You have mizardin, which is cutting all types of branches, even healthy branches, in order to lessen the number of branches on the tree, to decrease the burden. You have mifasgin, which is propping up a drooping tree. You have mezavlin, which is fertilizing the tree. Mefarkin, which is removing stones off the roots. Ma'afkin is covering the roots with more soil. And ma'ashna is creating smoke under the tree in order to kill worms which are affecting the leaves. These are all forbidden things. The brisa divides it up into three groups, but it has the same limit for each of them. We should discuss why it's listed as three. And the limit again is the syntax of sadcha lo sizmar lo sizra and karmacha lo sizmar. Says the brisa further though that there are some activities which are permitted, and the ones which are permitted are as follows. There's mekashkesh, which is hoeing, loosening the soil under a grapevine. Rashi obviously asks the kasha that we just said before that that's forbidden. Rashi offers an answer, says there are two different types of hoeing. There's one on a already soft soil and one on hardened soil. He says that you can see that in a Gemara later. And then there's filling the holes in the ground with water so that it should seep through to the plant. That's another permitted activity. And then there's actually making little trenches between the roots of a grapevine in order to be able to put water there. Now, what's the limit that these things are permitted? If we said sadcha lo sizra and karmacha lo sizmar excludes, makes forbidden all types of work, why is this permitted? So the brisa says the reason is because the Torah did not have to mention the toldos malacha of zriya and zimur. the fact that it mentioned them, specifically Zriya, is in order to tell me a Hekesh, and to say that the only things that are forbidden are the things that apply to Zriya and to Zimar. The things that are work which you would do both in a field and in an orchard. Something which you would do only in one and not the other, that's not forbidden. And therefore, these activities are not forbidden. So, what you see from here, anyway, is there's a long list of Toldos Malacha that are forbidden. So, how could the Gemara therefore say earlier that Toldos are not Asar and Shemitah? That's the question. Also, it's interesting to note that we use the Limud for something else. We had previously said that the extra words are the extra listing of Toldos, the specific Toldos of pruning and harvesting grapevines, that's to tell me that no other Toldos are Asar. The Gemara here has a different drasha for that. It's to exclude specific types of Toldos. So the Gemara wants to, therefore, know, how could you tell me that Toldos are mutter? The Gemara answers, Toldos really are mutter. All these Isurim listed in its Brisa are Isuri Derabanan, and the pasuk that we're quoting is just an Esmachta, just to support a hint for the Isur Derabanan, but it's not really included in the Isur Deraisa. None of these are real drashas. Alright, now the Gemara has a kasha. We had here on the list, we had Kishkush as one of the things that is permitted. Kishkush, we said, was loosening the soil under olive trees. So the Gemara says, are you sure that that's permitted? There's a Brisa that says it's Asar. The Brisa says, on the pasuk V'ashviyas tishmetana unatashta, Shemitah, you should leave it alone and abandon it. So tishmetana means you shouldn't do kishkush, and atashta means you shouldn't do sakel. Tishtush, again, kishkush, again, we said, is loosening the soil under the olive trees specifically. And misakel is removing stones from the vineyard. So you see here that it says that it's Asar. So the Gemara says, no, there's two types of kishkush. There's one which is designed to make the tree stronger and healthier. That's called avruye. And that just increases the quality of the fruit. That does not prevent loss. And there's a different one, which is to cover cracks in the roots. That you need to prevent the tree from withering and dying, and that's to prevent a loss, and therefore that's what's permitted. Preventing a loss is permitted. Increasing the quality of fruits is not permitted. All right. Now the Gemara moves on to a different malacha, a different topic, that of choresh, plowing. The Gemara is going to introduce a machlokes as to whether or not plowing, as to what level of forbidding plowing has during Shemitah. And the Gemara will bring the same brisa as a proof in that discussion. So the Gemara says, plowing during Shemitah. Now we know plowing is Asar. The Torah indicated that plowing is Asar with its asay. It gave a mitzvah asay, and it said, b'chorish of a kotzir, tishbais, you should rest from plowing. Now that pasuk is in the context of Shabbos, but it's not necessary there, and we have drashas that apply it to Shemitah. So plowing, it says that there is an asay that plowing is Asar. The question is, if it's only an asay, then you wouldn't get malchus for it. You only get malchus for violating a los asay. So the question is, does the los asay of all the los is sadcha lo this and karmacha lo that, does that apply to plowing as well? This is machlokes between Rav Yochanan and Rav Elazar. The Gemara doesn't say which one says which, but one says it is included in the los asay and therefore you get malchus for it, and the other one says it's not included in the los asay and therefore you don't get malchus for it. So now the Gemara wants to know, what is this machlokes about? What's the logic here? So the Gemara offers two propositions. The Gemara first wants to say maybe they argue about the rules of klal prat klal. Now we know often the Torah will speak of an isser in general terms, or speak of a mitzvah in general terms, and then it'll give one specific case of that isser, and sometimes it'll even speak about it again afterwards in general terms. So our rule is when you have a klal and then a prat, general terms then specific terms, the only thing that's asur is the specific term. We spoke about it in general terms first, but then we define the general issur with the specific. When you have general, specific, and then general again, it's coming to teach you that the specific is not only that, the specific is a category, and you're meant to broaden it to anything which fits in that category. That's klal, prat, klal. Now, that is always true when the klal prat klal are all either asays or all los asays, all formulated as a positive commandment or as a negative commandment. Question is, what happens when some are formulated as a positive commandment and others are formulated as a negative commandment? Do you still view them as one set, so as a klal prat klal? Or do you say, no, this gets broken up. It's not a klal prat klal because they're not formulated the same way. So now in Shemitah, we have the same thing. We have a klal prat klal, but it's not formulated in the same way. So the first klal is where it says, Shabbos Shabbosoin. It should be a rest day for you. Then it says, Sarchalo Sizra Kamachalo Sizmar. That's your prat. That's formulated as a losase. That's your specific. And then at the end again, it says Shabbos Shabboson. So that is back to being an assay, and it's back to being a general. So here you have general formulated as an assay, specific formulated as a losase, general formulated as an assay again. Does that count as a klal prat klal, and therefore you would include anything that's in the category of those malachos of Sizra and Sixtar, and therefore you could include plowing? Or is it not viewed as a klal prat klal? Now it's only viewed as a klal prat, and you can't include anything. So Rav Avin says the name of Ravi Law that any case where you have a klal prat klal, but some are assay and some are los to say you don't view it as a klal prat klal, and you can't include anything else. Gemara wants to say the one who says that plowing is included in the los to say disagrees with that. He says this is a klal prat klal, and you can include plowing. The one who says that plowing is not included in the los to say holds like that, and he says this is not a klal prat klal, and therefore it's only klal prat, and therefore plowing is not included in the prat. It's not included in this Isser. So the Gemara says this does not necessarily have to be what the Machlokes is about. It could be that the Machlokes is about something else entirely. Really, everybody agrees that this is a klal, prat, klal. We don't hold of this. We don't think that it makes a difference if it's formulated as an assay or a los assay. It doesn't all have to be the same. But here, there's a different reason to exclude plowing. What's that? That's the fact that the Torah mentions only two toldos. The Torah lists the Av Malachos, and then it lists only two toldos, like we've seen Joshua before. Same thing we said about the watering. It lists only two to tell me that these are the only two that are asur, but plowing is not asur. And therefore, that's why one opinion says that plowing is not included in this. Those to say you don't get makas for plowing. So the Gemara says, well, that can't be, because we have this entire drasha, which we said that we do include all these other toldos from Sadcha lo Sizra and Karmacha lo Sizmar. So how could that drasha make sense? So the Gemara again says, no, that's only Derabanan. We're talking about Deraisa. Deraisa is not included. Deraisa, therefore, all other things are not included, and therefore plowing is not included. You can't get malchus for a Derabanan. All right, now on the same topic, the Gemara notes that when Rav Dimi came from Eretz Yisrael, he said, look, I heard something in Eretz Yisrael that the Chachamim were saying. I didn't hear the whole thing, and I don't really understand it. I don't know what it was about. I heard them say that you might think you get malchus for the extra, but you don't. And there's a reason that you do not. So he said, I don't know what the extra was referring to, and I don't know why we have a drash that says you don't get malchus for it. So the Gemara says that Rav Elazar said that I'll explain to you that the extra thing that we're referring to here is plowing. And what the Chachamim there said was that you may think you get malchus for plowing, even though it's not mentioned in the Torah specifically. And you may think that it would be because of klal prat klal that it's included. But it's excluded for this reason, for the reason that we said that the Torah lists only two toldos, it doesn't list any other toldos to show that all those other toldos are permitted. So as the Gemara, there's a whole different explanation of what Rav Dimi heard. And this comes from Rav Yochanan. And Rav Yochanan says, really what Rav Dimi had heard was the halacha that it is also to do certain malachos before Shemitah begins. The Shemitah year begins on Rosh Hashanah. Certain Isurim apply even before that. And that extra comes from the fact that it says B'charish uvakatzir tishbois, that you should rest. And we have a drasha that says, why do you have to tell me B'charish uvakatzir tishbois? You should rest from plowing and planting. Again, this is written in the context of Shabbos, but we apply it to Shemitah. We don't need the Torah to tell me that you're not allowed to do charish in the katzir. It's already included in the other isurim, at least as an assay. So why does it say it? To tell me that it applies earlier, says the Gemara. That before Rosh Hashanah actually begins, before Shemitah begins, a certain plowing and cutting that helps next year's growth, which you do before Rosh Hashanah. You're not allowed to do those things before Rosh Hashanah to help next year's growth. You're not allowed to do anything, even not on Shemitah, to help Shemitah growth. So that would be the adding. That would be the additional thing. Now, we said that that's not forbidden. The Chachamim said that that's mutter. Now, the Gemara here doesn't say why. The Gemara says we'll see it later. That's on the next daf. And over there it's explained that there's a drasha from the word Shabbos, Shabboson, connecting Shemitah to Ma'aseh Bereshis. We'll see the drasha at length over there. Okay, now the Gemara wants to know, when does this Isser of plowing begin? How far back before Shemitah are you not allowed to plow? So the Gemara quotes a brisa which divides it into two types of plowing in an orchard and plowing in a grain field. As far as plowing in an orchard, there's Machlokes Beis Hill and Meshami. Meshami says it's from the time that it's no longer useful and helpful to the fruits growing in the 6th year. Plowing the ground is helpful while the fruits are still on the tree to a certain age, to a certain extent. Once that's over, you can't plow anymore because any plowing you're doing from here on in is supposed to be beneficial to the 7th year. Beis Hill says, no, it's from Shavuos. From Shavuos and on, you're not allowed to plow. So the Gemara is almost no machlokes, it's pretty much the same time. Now, that's for an orchard. As far as a grain field, so again, we have two opinions, possibly one explaining the other, not necessarily arguing. We have a Tanna Kama says that it's as long as there's moisture in the ground from the rain. And Rav Shimon, and it also adds that it's as long as people are plowing to plant squash and pumpkins. Those are things that are planted later in the season. So as long as you're doing plowing for that, that's allowed. Once that ends, any plowing you're planning to do from here on in has got to be for the 7th year, and therefore it's usher. Now, it says Rav Shimon, this can't be correct because different people plow for squash and pumpkins at different times of the year, and you'll end up having different isurim, that the isur starts different times for different individuals. We have to give a set time for it, and therefore the rule is as follows. A grain field you can't plow from after Pesach, and a tree orchard you can't plow from after Shavuos, like Beis Hillel said. Okay. Now the Gemara says that this isur may have actually been canceled. So Gemara quotes Rav Shimon ben Pazi. He says in the name of Yeshua ben Levi, he says in the name of Bar Kapara, Rav Gamliel and his Beis Din, cancel this isur, and you're allowed to plow all the way up till Rosh Hashanah. So Gemara says Rabbi Zera asked Rabbi Avo, says, how could they cancel it? Rabbi Rish Lakish and Rabbi Yechanan said, some say it was Rabbi Yechanan and Rish Lakish who said it. How could Rav Gamliel and his Beis Din cancel a takana from earlier? We have a rule that you cannot cancel a decree made by an earlier Beis Din unless you're greater than them in number and in wisdom. And Rabbi Gamliel and his Beis Din were not greater in number and wisdom than that of Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. So how could they do this? So the Gemara says he was a little shocked. Whoever it was that was asked was a little shocked. He was stunned for a minute, didn't answer. And then he said, well, it must be that when the decree was originally created, there was a condition put in that it was cancelable. They said if anybody later wants to cancel it, they are allowed to cancel it. Says Gemara, hold on a second. You're telling me that the source of this halacha, that you're not allowed to plow from it before, that's a takana set up by Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel? That's not where it's from. It's much earlier than that. It's halacha Moshe Sinai. It came from Har Sinai. How do you know? Because we have a statement of Rav Asi, named Rav Yochanan, named Rav Nechunya, Ish Bekas Beis Chorsan, who says that there are 3 halachas which are halacha Moshe Sinai, and one pertains to this isser of plowing before Shemitah. What are the 3 halachos? One is that you take arava on the 7th day of Sukkot. Another is that you pour water on the mizbeach on Sukkot. And the third is that the isser of plowing land before Shemitah does not apply if you have young trees on the ground with a density of 10 per besa. So you see that there's a limitation that's given in this halacha. Obviously, this halacha then is halacha Moshe Sinai. If the halacha Moshe Sinai is limiting it, obviously there's isser, therefore applies before. So the Gemara says, here's your answer. The halacha Moshe Sinai was that you're not allowed to plow 30 days before Shemitah, from Rosh Chodesh El. The extension to Pesach and to Shavuos, that comes from Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel, and that's the only thing that Rav Gamliel and his Beis Din cancels. Okay, then the Gemara moves on to say that it doesn't seem to come from Halacha Moshe Sinai or from Beis Din, it seems to come from Psukim, but it's a lengthy discussion as to how we learn it from Psukim, and the Gemara's attempt to reject that, which we shall get to on Daf Dalet.